So the first challenge right here would be a fraction. They are fractions. But that will also mean that they are geometric. So, so if you look at these numbers, what are they multiplying? Not 3, but 1/3. And not only 1/3, they are multiplying by -1/3. Right, so it's a geometric. Okay, it's multiplying and dividing. So, and we don't say dividing, so we just say multiplying by 1/3, and it is negative. You know it's negative because you see the minuses. The sign is changed because we're supposed to add them together, but why are we subtracting? Because it's because there's a negative sign. Now, compared to the previous example, we know there are 5 terms. Okay, well, how many terms are here? So we're like, oh yeah, I got the first term here. Okay, second term right here, third term, fourth term, and you have some terms in between, and then you have this, and we're like, huh? What? How do we know? So you have a little challenge right here. We need to figure out how many terms there are, because as of now, we have a little struggle here. Now we have A1. A1 is equal to 1. So we could write something like this, and this is what I hope that you can become more automatic. As long when you have A1 and the R for geometric, or A1 with a D, like the previous example, if you have A1 and D, you can always write down the nth term notation. So for this one, it's just 1 times -1/3 to the n minus 1. And times 1 means itself. So you can simplify it by just saying this. So we technically have most of the summation notation written down. So we say, oh yeah, that's equal to the summation notation of n equals to 1 all the way to, oh, we don't know. And then what's the an? It's going to be the nth term notation is this. Okay, -1/3 to the n minus 1 power. So, but we need to figure out what is the top number up there. That is the primary, the most important challenge here for this question. How are we going to find out what term it is when it is 1/729? Now, let me ask you a question. Okay, is the n going to be a positive? Is the n number going to be an odd number or even number? It'll be what? Why is it even? But then if you look at the list here, this is n equals to 1. This is n equals to 2, which is negative. N equals to 3, n equals to 4. Well, because of the n minus 1. Now the n minus 1 will be even. So that means the n must be odd. Okay, I hope you can see that. Okay, the n has to be an odd number, but what is that number? Now you may guess, but we don't want to do the guessing part. We want to prove it. Now you will have a calculator, but I want to show you the way to work things out here. So we're like, oh yeah, so you have this number 1/729. So we can actually use this little notation. So we can say, well, 1/729, it's equal to -1/3 time raised to the n minus 1 power. Now, and we're going to do something artificially based on a reason. What are we going to do? Let's go ahead and disregard the minus for the moment. Okay, so let me write this down. Disregard the minus sign for the moment. The reason, now it's the reason that makes that's the most important part. The reason why we can disregard the negative sign for the moment is because we know that the n is going to be an odd number, and then the n minus 1 is going to be an even number, And when you have a negative sign raised to an even power, it's going to be positive. So that's the justification why we can artificially ignore the negative sign for the moment. So now that's the one of the biggest hurdle we move, because if you want to find out what n is, you will need to do natural log. That's how you can get the exponent. And if you do natural log, you cannot do natural log of -1/3. Okay. So now we can say, all right, so natural log of 1/729, natural log of 1/3, and then the n-1 goes to the front. So you can go ahead and do natural log of 1/729 over natural log of 1/3. That's equal to n-1. Okay. So the tools that we used, that we learned back in Algebra 2 and earlier this school year with natural log, how to find out the exponent, that is still very useful here. So now you will use a calculator, and on the quiz, you have a calculator for the quiz. So we say, all right, let's go ahead and use a calculator. And natural log of 1/729 divided by natural log of 1/3, and let's see what it is. And the answer is 6. So we have 6 equals to n-1. So if n-1 equals to 6, then n must be 7. Okay. So now we know that 1/729 up there, it's our 7th term. So for our sigma notation, the top number would be a 7. So that's going to be a big challenge, because we have this dot, dot, dot. That's like, oh yeah, we skip out some terms that we're not showing you. And you've got to figure out what term it is for the very last number. And you need to know that, hey, if that is the number that you're seeing, you can find out the n by putting that number into the equation, the nth term equation. Then you can find out the n. But this one is particularly challenging because there's a negative right there. And if you type in, say, if you go back to the calculator, you type natural log of -1/3. Well, guess what the calculator will tell you? Non-real results. And if you don't know how to deal with the situation with good justification, then it's going to be a pretty challenging, daunting task. Okay.